Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm going to be sharing with you the 4 stages of enlightenment and more detail on the 10 fetters. Today is an opportunity for you to see the underlying thing that the Buddha is guiding you to be able to eliminate from the mind in order to experience enlightenment. So far in the group learning program, I've walked you through a 3-part series of helping you understand the core central teaching of the Buddha, which is the Eightfold Path. And that Eightfold Path is something that you'll need to get your arms around slowly but surely, dialing that in more and more. That's going to be the path that's helping you to actually attain enlightenment. But underneath of all of that, what all of that is working to help you eliminate are the 10 fetters. And today I'm going to introduce you to these. These are things that you don't necessarily have to absolutely remember today, because you're going to need to focus on these in the future. But here at the beginning of our program, you'll understand what's underlying all of this work that the Buddha is actually teaching you and guiding you to understand. Also, by understanding the 4 stages of enlightenment and the 10 fetters, you'll be able to then start working with the Eightfold Path and understand how the meditation and all the other aspects of the path is helping you to eliminate these from the mind. It's going to help you to understand what's actually plaguing the mind and hindering it and obstructing it from being in the unenlightened state and actually attaining enlightenment. And just like all the times that I've ever taught you, it's important that you don't believe what I share with you on the 10 fetters, but instead that you learn them, you reflect on them, and you practice them. You'll hear as I describe them to you that these 10 pollutions or taints or defilements are actually in your mind, because as I describe the symptoms of them to you, you'll be able to directly look at your life and see that your mind is experiencing these things, and that indeed the Buddha did figure out these individual pollutions. And by eradicating them, this is what's going to produce the enlightened mind, where that brightness and brilliance and radiance can come shining through. That when you clear out this pollution, you'll experience the peace, calm, serenity, and contentedness with joy that is the enlightened mind. You'll experience the focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. You'll notice your personal, professional relationships will really blossom, and you won't even be in a bad mood anymore. So I'm going to start with meditation just like I do every class, and then I will move into sharing with you the 10 fetters and the 4 stages of enlightenment. And then next week, we're going to be starting from chapter 1 of this book, Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment. We're going to be going chapter by chapter, every single chapter from that point forward, starting with chapter 1 next week, which is titled Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, and Good Morals. This is where you're going to learn the connections between the teachings of Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam teachings or Muslim teachings, and all these other traditions that are out there. You're going to start seeing these connections between them, and it'll help you to kind of bridge over from whatever you've been learning in the past. It'll kind of help you to bridge over to something like the teachings of the Buddha, where it's not based on belief, but instead you're learning to acquire wisdom in order to train the mind. But you can see these commonalities that we're going to be talking about next week. So if you don't have a version of this book yet, you might decide to download it from our website, buddhadailywisdom.com. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed copies here at the temple by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order them on Amazon if you have access to Amazon. So if you'd like to join for the meditation, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting like I typically do, and you'll be learning this later in the program. And then, by the way, this Wednesday I'm going to be teaching loving kindness meditation. So it's something that you're going to need as part of your journey to enlightenment. It's a 4-part series on loving kindness meditation, and if you can't attend live, it's helpful for you to be able to see the recording recording and actually learn from that. So we're going to do breathing mindfulness meditation here together, but in the future, we're going to be doing some loving kindness meditation together as I'm teaching that to you as part of the 4-part series. So if you'd like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, there's also a walking position that you can learn through the videos and different courses that I teach. You might be sitting on the floor in a chair. I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, and then I'll be back with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakhato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale Breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมโมโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I would like to once again welcome all of you guys, whether you're joining us for the first time or you've been joining us regularly. Welcome to our class today. We are going to be discussing the 10 Fetters and the 4 Stages of Enlightenment. This is going to help you to understand the individual pollutions or defilements or the taints that the Buddha discovered in the unenlightened mind and what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. And it's through eradicating these 10 fetters that the mind then moves through the 4 stages of enlightenment, and you actually experience enlightenment as part of the elimination of these 10 fetters. And this is why it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, that you can't just snap your fingers and instantly eradicate these pollutions, that the mind is holding on to these. They're deeply rooted in the mind. These are referred to as mental objects, like we were talking about last week with being aware of the mental objects. You're going to need to have a general understanding of these just here at the beginning of the group learning program. But then, by and large, you can really set these to the side, because everything that I'll be teaching you in this program is working to help you eliminate these 10 fetters. But at some point in the future, you're going to need to revisit them, and you're going to need to deeply understand what they are, the symptoms that they produce, how to eliminate them, and how to know that you have eliminated them. This is something that I discuss in the various retreats that I offer in January and in August. I go through these 4 aspects of each individual fetter: what it is, the symptoms of it, how to eradicate it from the mind, and how to know that you've actually eradicated it. But today what we're going to be doing is just focusing on describing it, introducing it to you, talking about some of the symptoms, so that you can see for yourself that your mind does indeed have these 10 fetters. That as you've learned, that you don't believe what it is that I'm sharing with you. As I'm sharing these teachings with you today and every other day, you're learning, you're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing. That as I'm describing to you what these fetters are, and I describe describe to you the examples of things that you'll experience because of these fetters, you should be able to look at your life and you should be able to see like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I experienced. You can see that these are the truth, that the Buddha indeed discovered what's plaguing the mind. And you can see how by eradicating these, that the mind will be experiencing the peace, calmness, serenity, and contentedness with joy, all those qualities of the enlightened mental state. And as we go in our class, just like every class, you're always welcome to ask any and all questions. I'm going to pause it a few times and talk and open up to any questions. If you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your questions into the comment section. I'll be able to see that and answer your question. And if you're in Zoom, you have the added feature of electronically raising your hand and asking any and all questions that you like by just opening up your microphone. So thank you for joining for today's class, and let's jump right into talking about the 10 fetters. The reason why they're called the 10 fetters is because during ancient times, the way that they would keep prisoners trapped in a particular area or confined to a certain area is by attaching a fetter to their leg. And what a fetter is a shackle with a chain and a ball. And this is how they would keep prisoners confined to a certain area, because it would just be an open area. Today we have prison cells that we will tend to keep prisoners in. But during the ancient times, they would attach this fetter, a shackle, a chain, and a ball to keep you trapped in a particular area and confined to that area. Well, the Buddha describes these individual pollutions or taints or defilements as fetters because they're keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state, continuing to experience discontentedness over and over and over and over and over again. So it's when you eliminate these fetters that the mind is free. It's liberated. Just like the prisoner is liberated when he releases the shackle from the ankle, the prisoner is liberated. They can go anywhere they would like to go. They're unfettered. So the same thing is true with your mind, that when you eradicate these 10 fetters, then the mind is free. It's liberated. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. So understanding these is really important because this is like the underlying engine of everything that the Buddha is guiding you to understand. He's guiding you to be able to understand how to eradicate these. So that Eightfold Path that we talked about, that's the core central teaching that you're going to need that on board in order to eradicate the 10 fetters. And you're going to need things like meditation training and understanding the 5 precepts and so many other things that I'm going to be teaching you as part of this program. But here I'm going to introduce this to you so that you can understand what's underlying all of this. And then I would encourage you to focus on the core central teachings of the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, developing your meditation practice, understanding the natural law of Gotama, the 3 poisons, all these things that I'm going to be teaching you as we go forward in the program. So this is just to really help you get introduced to these 10 fetters so that you can understand the underlying thing that you're working to eliminate. And you'll be able to directly reflect on what it is that I'm sharing with you today to know that your mind does indeed have all of these 10 fetters, and that by understanding what they are, you'll be able to more readily eradicate them. But in terms of talking about how to specifically eradicate them in detail, I'm going to be talking about that at other times in other programs. But I'll kind of touch on it for a few of them here to be able to help you understand how to eradicate some of them. But I won't go into extensive detail because you don't yet have the core central teachings under your belt and really well practiced and well developed yet. So going in and actually talking about some of these in too much detail about how to eliminate them, it wouldn't really help you right now at this point because you need to focus on the core central teachings first. So let's talk about this first one, and I'll go through each individual one. There's the lower fetters and there's the higher fetters. So the lower fetters comprise of these 5 that you see here on the screen: personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior and observances, central desire, and ill will. What personal existence view is how the mind has this misunderstanding or this confusion or this misperception or misunderstanding that this body or this mind is you and who you are as a person. So the mind clings to the self-image or the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And now your mind gets shaken up as a result of this. So because the mind misunderstands that this body is you, the mind is clinging to a certain self-image, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. And the mind wants that to be permanent. And now when the mind is experiencing agreeable things related to your self-image, you'll get pleasant feelings. But when you experience disagreeable things related to your self-image, then you'll experience the painful feelings. So for example, if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a mole or a pimple or a wrinkle or a gray hair, or you were thinning of your hair, or you're getting a little bit of fat here and there, and your mind was shaken up by this is because of personal existence view. Or if you've ever been in a social situation where you spilled like chocolate ice cream or spaghetti sauce or pizza sauce or something like this on your clothes, and your mind felt embarrassed, this is because of personal existence view. The mind is clinging to this body, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. And when you're getting that, when you're perceived in the world the way you want, you'll feel pleasant feelings. But when you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived, then you'll feel things like embarrassment or other feelings like this. If you've ever noticed that you had a certain thing that you wanted, that when people complimented you, for example, and they said, wow, you're so beautiful, or wow, your eyes are such a nice color, or wow, that color of that shirt really brings out the colors of your eyes. And now when you wanted this compliment, you experience these pleasant feelings. But it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative and degrading about this physical body. Because of impermanence, not everybody's polite in the world. Not everybody's respectful. So if you're around people that are polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, you'll get all these pleasant feelings when they're complimenting you about your self-image. But then when you hear somebody say something degrading or disparaging, or maybe they look at you in a way that you interpret as being degrading or disparaging about your self-image, now you'll feel sad or angry or frustrated. This is because of personal existence view, and the mind's clinging to the body, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. Then there's the self-identity. This is some things like your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, maybe your job or occupation. Your mind clings to these things thinking that this is who you are as a person. And now when you hear agreeable things about those things, you'll feel pleasant feelings. But because of impermanence, it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative and degrading, and now you'll experience the painful feelings. So let's just say you think that I am American or I am Canadian, right? Having this I am in the mind. Well, now if somebody says all Americans are friendly and kind and loving, wow, well, I am American, so they're talking about me, so therefore I will experience these pleasant feelings. But it's only a matter of time before maybe you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody's saying something degrading and disparaging about Americans or Canadians or British people or Australian people or Brazilian people or wherever you're from and whatever you identify with. Somebody's degrading and disparaging that. And now they're talking about me because they're saying all Americans are this way or all Canadians are this way. And now they're talking about me. The mind's clinging to that, thinking that this is who you are. And now you'll feel angry, or you'll feel frustrated or agitated or annoyed. Or say you've been in a particular job or occupation and you've identified with this as who you are. Like, I am a taxi driver, I am a waiter, I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, I am a business owner, or something like this. And now you identify with that as who you are. Well, now as long as you're in that job, you might feel pleasant feelings. But then when you leave the job, maybe you get fired, maybe you get laid off, maybe you retire, maybe you get injured and you can't do the job anymore. And now you feel lost. You feel like a part of you is missing because that identity of I am a police officer is no longer intact. The mind is clinging to this, thinking I am a police officer. And now for 10 years, as you're a police officer, you feel really good about that. But now when you get injured and you can't do that anymore, and now you're maybe doing something else, you don't feel whole. You don't feel complete. You feel like part of you is missing. And the same thing is true like if you've ever been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife, and you identify with I am a husband or I am a wife, or I am a boyfriend, or I am a girlfriend, and your mind's holding on to that identity of who you are as a person. Well, now when you're in the relationship, you feel great, you feel wonderful. But then when you separate and you're no longer in that role anymore, the mind's not experiencing this self-image being intact, and now you are single, and the mind doesn't identify with that. And you might feel like you want to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because the mind wants to assume that identity of I am a husband or I am a wife or I am a boyfriend or I am a girlfriend. The mind's trying to cling to this, thinking that this is who you are. So this can happen around your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation. I've even had students before that shared with me, like, I am a great tipper, right? And now when they think that I am a great tipper, when they're out and about and they're tipping, they feel great. But then they talk to me and they said, I keep going into all these different places that are just taking my order for 30 seconds, like maybe ordering a coffee or something, and they want a tip from me. They're like giving me a iPad or a tablet and asking me to type in a tip. And I feel really conflicted in this situation, and I don't understand why. And the answer is because they have that identity in their mind of I am a great tipper. And now when they're not tipping, they feel conflicted. Or you might even think that I am a kind person. You might have that in your mind as I am a kind person. And your mind might be clinging to that as your identity. And now when somebody says, gosh, you're the most rude person I've ever met, now you're like, whoa, right? You're clinging to that identity of I am kind. And now when someone tells you something opposite of that, your mind is shaken up by that because you're clinging to this self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. So this is the confusion or the misunderstanding or misperception that the mind's having, that it's clinging to this body, this self-image, and or the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And as long as those things are in there, your mind is shaken up. You might even get to a point where you feel like you don't even know who you are anymore. Like you don't even know who you are. Some people come to Thailand in search of their true self. They don't even know who they are, right? And they might come to Thailand on this journey to try to find themselves. Well, they can't find themselves. They might find a new job, a new hobby, new friends, new activities, but none of those things are you. It's not who you are. But the mind thinks that this is who you are, right? So people will oftentimes go on this long journey to try to find themselves. So there's a solution here. It's called the universal truth of non-self, where the Buddha explains that there is no self, that this personal existence view is just a pollution of mind that needs to be eradicated from the mind. And when you uproot this and eradicate it, you can realize non-self. You can realize that this body nor this mind is you. So intellectually, you might be starting to understand this a little bit, but it's a bit of a challenge for the mind to understand this fetter, because all through your life, you've been taught that this body is you, or this certain identity is you, right? You were given a label at birth. I was given a label of David. I am David, right? And now when I've been in situations before in the past where somebody else had the same name, I would be angry or irritated that they have the same name as me, because I am David. They're not David, right? So you can have this kind of thing going on. You've been, taught the national anthem of where you live, and maybe there's a flag associated with this, and you've been taught that I am American or I am Canadian, and you start identifying with this nationality. Well, you can eradicate all this from the mind, and you can experience peace and joy, because when somebody says something complimentary about your self-image or self-identity, you might say thank you, appreciate your kind words or whatever you say. But then when somebody says something negative and degrading and disparaging, doesn't affect you, because that's not who I am. If somebody says something like, all Americans are horrible, or this, that, or the other thing, okay, that's their opinion. That's what they're thinking, but that's not who I am as a person. So I know that this body was born in a land that we now call America. It hasn't always been called that, right? It was born on a particular landmass that we call America, but that doesn't mean I have to adopt the identity of I am American. So the mind can understand that this body was born in a particular place that's referred to as America, but there's no reason that I have to accept the identity of I am American. I can realize that I'm performing the role of a Buddhist teacher without adopting the identity of I am a Buddhist teacher, right? Because then when somebody says all Buddhist teachers are loving and kind, okay, you'll get pleasant feelings. But if somebody says something negative and degrading, that all Buddhist teachers are horrible, okay, you're going to get painful feelings. But if you don't adopt that identity in your mind, when somebody says something negative and degrading about Buddhist teachers, okay, they're not talking about me, because there's no me here. There's no I here. There is no identity that I'm clinging to. I'm providing the role of being a Buddhist teacher and sharing those teachings, but the mind doesn't identify that way. So you're going to notice as you're going forward in life, and as you look back over your life, that you've experienced anger and frustration and agitation related to this personal existence view, based on your self-image that the mind's clinging to, based on the self-identity that the mind's clinging to. There are certain things that you've been experiencing throughout your life where because of this pollution, you've experienced discontentedness. So by eradicating the clinging and the craving and holding on to this personal existence view, you can get more liberated and more peace. And this comes through realizing non-self and realizing that there is no personal existence view, that even though that pollution is in your mind now, you can eradicate that. You can eradicate this idea that there is a self, and now you can experience the peace and joy. And I shared a few classes back when I talked about thinking about yourself as a child, as a teenager, early adulthood, and now think about yourself and how you viewed yourself. And you can see that it's been constantly changing. So you can see there is no permanent self. Or you can think about if you had an arm that was amputated and you only have one hand and one arm. You can see that you're not less of a person. Intellectually, you can understand that if you have only one hand and one arm, you're not less of a person. But if I asked you the question, if you had your arm amputated, are you less of a person? And most people say, no, I'm not less of a person. Well, there you go. You see intellectually that this body isn't you. But you can see the confusion and the misunderstanding that the mind has, that in a situation where somebody either compliments the physical body or says something negative or degrading about it, that your mind being confused, you'll either get pleasant feelings or painful feelings. But intellectually, you understand that this body isn't you, because you understand if you only have one hand and one arm, you're not less of a person. Or you can point to yourself and you can see that this shirt is not you, this skin is not you, these bones are not you, the muscle tissue, the organs, the fluid, none of this stuff is you. But because of the confusion, misunderstanding, and misperception that the mind has, it has this pollution, a personal existence view, that needs to be gradually eradicated from the mind. And we're going to be talking about this in chapter 16, that when we get to that, we're going to be talking about dissolving the ego. This is part of the ego. And I'm going to be giving you detailed examples of what this is and how it manifests, and certain proactive training and techniques that you can use to actually eradicate it. But today we're just talking about an introduction to help you understand what it is, so you can see that your mind indeed has this personal existence view in the mind. Then the second fetter is called doubt. What this is this is where you have doubt about the teachings and the ability of them to attain enlightenment. Like maybe you doubt the Buddha, the teachings, the community. Maybe you doubt your teacher, whether or not I'm actually able to help you get to enlightenment. Or maybe you doubt your own ability to attain enlightenment. This is called doubt, that you have a doubt whether or not the Buddha lived. You have doubt about whether these teachings lead to enlightenment. You have doubt about this community that you're part of, and will they really be supportive and encouraging to help you get to enlightenment. You might have doubt about your teacher and their ability to help you, or your own ability to get to enlightenment. You might have doubt about that as well. Well, the way that you eliminate this is you eliminate it not through belief, not through faith. That's not how you eliminate doubt. You eliminate doubt through investigation of the teachings, examining the teachings, because it's very common for somebody to have doubt. You may have doubt. I know that I had doubt when I came to this path, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I have a lot of doubt about these teachings. I don't know whether this person, the Buddha, lived. I don't know if his teachings lead to enlightenment. I don't know if I'll be able to get to enlightenment. So I rolled up the sleeves. I harnessed this doubt. I turned it into an inquisitive mind where I deeply soaked my teeth into the teachings, and I was in and out of the discourses, and I was looking to understand the teachings and see if they really truly work. I was applying the techniques of meditating and all these other things. And the more and more that I investigated and examined the teachings, I saw that they're true. They're absolutely true, that they will lead to your enlightenment. You will see this significant decrease of discontentedness all the way through your path to enlightenment. And then ultimately, as you get to enlightenment, it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you won't be experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. So if you have doubt right now about any of these things, if you doubt the Buddha, the teachings, the community, if you have doubt about me or your own ability to get to enlightenment, okay, that's where you are now. That's a pollution. That's going to hinder you from being able to progress forward. Because when you have doubt, you'll be complacent. You won't want to come to class to learn. You won't want to pick up the book. You're not interested in meditating. You're just kind of on the cursory. You have one foot in and one foot out, right? You have kind of an ear to the door, but you haven't really walked through the door. That's what doubt does for you, that it produces this complacency in the mind. So by you harnessing and turning this into an inquisitive mind where you investigate the teachings and examine them, now you can work towards eradicating this doubt. But it might take 6 months, a year, or longer for you to get to the point where you eradicate your doubt. Because as you're examining the teachings and you see the improvement to the condition of your mind and the condition of your life, this is how you eradicate the doubt. Because if you examine the teachings and you apply them in daily life through the meditations and all those other factors of the Eightfold Path, you'll experience improvement. It's only a matter of time. And that's how you eradicate doubt. By the time you eradicate doubt, you're not going to be enlightened yet, but you'll know that these teachings are indeed leading to an improved condition of mind. You'll get to the point where you have confidence in the Buddha, that you'll know that this person lived for sure. Because 2,500 years ago, when he taught, and now you're learning his teachings and it's actually working to improve the condition of your mind and your life, you'll know this person lived for sure. You'll have confidence in his teachings. You'll have confidence in the community that you're part of. You'll have confidence in your teacher because you will have seen that they were able to guide you through helping you to develop your mind. And you'll have confidence in your own ability to attain enlightenment because you've seen the progress. You've seen the improvement. You've come to classes, you've read books, you've developed a meditation practice, and you see this reduction in your discontentedness gradually, slowly but surely. So you will get to the point where you have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment. And this is how you eradicate the doubt. Otherwise, it's going to obstruct you and hinder you from being able to get to enlightenment. Then there's the third fetter, which is wrong behavior and observances. There's two aspects to this, so I'm going to explain them differently. So wrong behavior, what this is this is the unskillful conduct that you might be involved in that is producing unwholesome results in your life. So when we talked about right speech, right action, right livelihood 2 weeks ago, that's the natural law of Gotama, where the Buddha is providing you the wisdom of how to improve your moral conduct so that you're not causing harm to others, so harm doesn't come back to you. But because you lack wisdom of that individual details of the natural law of Gotama, you're most likely doing some of those things. Like you might be lying, you might be slandering or gossiping, you might be having harsh speech in terms of your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You might be having frivolous speech where you're just kind of yada, 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 kind of idle chatter. You may be killing living beings like animals or something like this. You may be stealing. You may be having sexual misconduct. And then in terms of your livelihood, you may be having business in weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. Or you might be doing scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, or pursuing gain with gain as part of your livelihood. This is what I taught you 2 weeks ago. And if you haven't seen that yet, you can go back and look at it. Because by you bringing your practice up to that level, you will then eliminate wrong behavior. And why it's really important for you to do that is, remember, it's not rules, it's not commandments. These are harmful things that you're choosing to potentially do in the world. And now as you do that, this harm is going to come back to you. So by you shutting that down, it's like shutting down the door. It's like closing the gate on the unwise decisions that you're making that are producing unwholesome results for you. As long as you have that gate wide open, then you're putting out harm and you've got more and more harm that's going to come back to you. So by you shutting down the wrong behavior as soon as possible, getting your arms around the moral conduct, that's shutting down the unwholesome results that you're going to have to deal with coming back to you. So wrong behavior are those unskillful conduct that you're doing, either your speech, your actions, or your livelihood. And you can purify that by training your mind where you're practicing right speech, right action, right livelihood closer and closer and closer. And ultimately, when you get to that level of detail in the Eightfold Path, you will have eradicated wrong behavior. What wrong observances are, this is the rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship where the mind's thinking that these things are what's going to lead to some improvement in life. So if you're getting water sprinkled on you, or you're putting water on yourself, or if you're eating wafers, or you're drinking wine at a ceremony, or there's any kind of ceremonial things that are going on, like rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and you think that somehow this is going to miraculously improve your life, then the mind has wrong observances, and it's misunderstanding the true problem that you're experiencing. The true problem that you're experiencing is a lack of wisdom, that the mind is unawake to the natural laws of existence. So if an individual thought that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship is going to lead to some improvement in your life, then the mind has wrong observances, that it thinks that these things are going to somehow miraculously, magically, superstitiously, auspiciously change things that I'm experiencing in life. And this isn't going to lead to improved results in your life, because everything is cause and effect, or action and result. You're making certain decisions and it's producing a certain result. So if you're just having all these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship happening around you, then it's not leading to improved decision making. It's not leading to improved wisdom that will then allow you to experience more wholesome results. Oftentimes when somebody comes to learn with me, they've already eradicated wrong observances because they've already been through those things. They've already been to all the different places that are performing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and they've learned, hey, these things don't lead to an improved life because I've done them throughout my life, and my life is still having difficulties. I'm still angry. I'm still frustrated. I'm still irritated or annoyed, or I'm still experiencing stress and anxiety. Those rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't improving that. So you may have already eradicated this aspect of this particular fetter so that you understand that wrong observances are not going to lead to an improved condition of mind. Whether you choose to do these things is your choice, right? Like say you're going to the mosque with your family, or you're going to the synagogue with your family, or maybe you're going to church or a temple or something like this. And maybe it's a family event and you guys are going out to eat afterwards and it's a holiday and you'd like to hang out with everybody. Well, hey, if people are doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, that's up to them. But your mind needs to understand that these things are not going to lead to an improved life because there's no wisdom that's being cultivated in order to lead to improved results in your life. So as long as your mind understands this, that's what the elimination of this particular fetter is. You know, it's not like if a monk sprinkled water on you, you'd melt like the Wicked Witch of the West or anything like that, right? If a monk sprinkles water on you, it's like, okay, well, that was refreshing. What's next? It's not going to lead to any kind of improved results in terms of you being more holy or you being more blessed or anything like this. All of those things are untrue. But oftentimes people are doing those things because it's really easy to show up to a building, do a couple of rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and go home and think that you've actually done some kind of beneficial thing. And now you just continue to be angry, continue to be bitter and harsh and hostile, and your relationships continue to have difficulties. But when you understand the real problem, that it's these pollutions of mind that is causing these difficulties in life, then you'll get to the point where you understand rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to improve your wisdom, and it's not going to improve the way that the condition of the mind functions. So this is wrong behavior and observances. It's all about your moral conduct, and it's all about how the mind thinks about how to actually improve the results that you're experiencing, that it's not rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. Then we have central desire that's in the unenlightened mind. Whenever we talk about craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectations, this is what we're talking about. So generally, when you first start, when you're learning the Four Noble Truths and you're learning all the other teachings, we just talk about craving, desire, attachment, this longing, this yearning, the mind thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. And that's what we describe as the craving, desire, attachment, the wants, the longing, the yearning. And if you get what you want, you get pleasant feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get painful feelings. Well, when we talk about it in general, we talk about it as craving, desire, attachment. But when we talk about it as a fetter or a pollution or a taint, it's central desire. This is a mental object. This is a deeply rooted container in the mind where the mind is longing, yearning through what's referred to as the 6 sense spaces. Now, this is where the Buddha is explaining to you how the world is, right? He's explaining to you how this human being functions so that you can understand this, that what the mind's doing is it's longing, yearning through your 6 sense spaces, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. The mind is longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanently pleasing. So you want to see things that are permanently agreeable to you. And when you see things that are agreeable to you, you get pleasant feelings. But when you see things that are disagreeable to you, you get painful feelings. You get angry or sad or frustrated. And the same thing's happening with the ears in terms of sounds that you hear, either agreeable or disagreeable, odors that you smell, either agreeable or disagreeable, flavors that you taste on the tongue, either agreeable or disagreeable, physical objects that come in contact with the body, either agreeable or disagreeable, and then certain thoughts, certain mental objects, either agreeable or disagreeable. You'll experience pleasant feelings or painful feelings. So let me give you some examples. Say you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside. Well, the sun is a physical form that you're seeing with the eyes. And if that's agreeable to you, you'll get all these pleasant feelings based on the condition that it's sunny, because the mind has this central desire. I want to see the sun. But now if you form your inner feeling of happiness on the sun, because the sun is impermanent and you have that central desire where the mind's craving and clinging and holding on to the sun, wanting it to be permanent, when it now rains, the mind is sad, or it's angry, or it's frustrated, or agitated, or annoyed, because the mind has central desire. It's wanting this sun to be permanent, and you want permanently agreeable things to be seen through the eyes. Or here's another example. Say you're walking down the street and you see a parent and a child holding hands. You might be like, oh, that's so beautiful. That's so lovely. Look at that. The parents are holding the child's hand. They're walking together. They've got smiles on their face. The sun is shining. Oh, this is so beautiful. I just feel so lovely about this. If this is like a wonderful, happy, excited feeling that is based on the condition of seeing something agreeable through the eyes. But now you walk down the street and you turn the corner and you see a parent slap their child across the face. Oh, now you see something that's disagreeable to you. And now you get angry and you get frustrated, you get agitated because you're seeing a physical form that's disagreeable to you, right? We're not talking about what's wise or unwise here, because obviously it's unwise to hit anybody, including a child, especially a child, right? It's unwise to do that. But we're just talking about what's causing your mind to be discontent. It's this central desire. The mind is longing, yearning through these sense bases, wanting permanently agreeable contact. And when you see something that is agreeable, you get pleasant feelings. And when you see something that's disagreeable, you get painful feelings. And the same thing is happening with the ears too, and all these other sense bases. Say you pull up to a traffic light in your car and you hear music next to you. And you're like, oh, that's my jam. All right. Yeah, let's go. Come on. Let's jam out. Yeah, come on. Party, 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 right? And now you get so excited based on this music. Well, now the light turns green and you go forward. That car zooms off. And now you get stopped at the next light. And somebody else pulls up to you with a different type of music that you find disagreeable. Because the mind has a certain craving. It has a certain central desire. It wants things to be permanently agreeable. When you hear something through the ears that is agreeable to you, you get pleasant feelings. But now this music that you despise, that you can't stand, now you get frustrated and agitated and annoyed. It's not the music that's causing that. And it's not the person who's playing the music. They're not the one who's causing you to be agitated or annoyed. What's causing you to be agitated or annoyed is the central desire, this fetter, this taint, this pollution. The mind is longing, yearning through the ears, wanting things to be permanently agreeable, when in reality, you live in an impermanent world. You're not going to hear things that are permanently agreeable. The same thing's happening with the nose. You might be walking down the street and you walk by a flower shop and it's like, ah, that smells so great, right? But then you walk a few more steps and you smell the sewer. You smell the odor of the sewer and it's like, the mind's repulsed by the smell of the sewer, right? Or maybe you go through a particular department store and you smell the perfume and cologne as you're walking through. And it's like, wow, that smells great. But now you get into an elevator with somebody and maybe they have this other perfume or cologne that you don't like. And now you feel repulsed by this. Well, this is because the mind's longing, yearning through the nose to have permanently agreeable odors, when it's just not possible because you live in an impermanent world. And then the same thing is happening with the tongue in terms of flavors. There are certain foods that you find agreeable to you. And when you taste those foods, you feel great. You feel pleasant feelings. Maybe chocolate ice cream, right? Or maybe some other thing, maybe chocolate cake or something like this. You feel these pleasant feelings based on the condition of having an agreeable flavor touch your tongue. But now, maybe when you taste your friend's food, maybe they invite you over for dinner and you've never eaten at their house before, and now you taste their food and you're like, oh my goodness, this is so horrible, right? This is because of the mind's craving. The mind is longing, yearning through the tongue to have permanently agreeable flavors, and it's just not possible. And what the mind will tend to do in this situation is it'll push it away. You might have certain foods that you're like, that is horrible. I'm never going to eat that ever again. Well, what I encourage you to do is actually eat those things and train your mind to look at food as just something to nourish the body. Because what the central desire is doing is the central desire thinks the purpose of food is to please you, is to give you these pleasant feelings. That's what the mind thinks the purpose of food is. So this is why when you're sad or you're angry, you're frustrated, you might turn to food looking to get pleasant feelings, because the mind is trying to base its feelings on some condition. It turns to craving. Because of its lack of wisdom, it'll turn to craving, and it thinks that the way to get out of this anger and the sadness and the frustration is to eat. And if I eat, I'll get those pleasant feelings, and that's what the mind's thinking is solving the problem. But it's not solving the problem, because the underlying fetter of central desire, the underlying craving is still there, that you haven't actually eradicated the craving. The mind is turning to a flavor on the tongue to just get pleasant feelings, and now the cycle continues over and over and over again. So by looking at food as just something to nourish the body, you can put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is eat that fruit or eat that vegetable or eat that certain thing that the mind does not like, and you can train it gradually that you can look at food as just something to nourish the body. Then there might be certain physical objects that touch the body, maybe like a certain fabric that you find agreeable. And when you have that fabric on the body, you feel really great. But then when something else touches the body that you find disagreeable, you might feel irritated or annoyed or agitated. I know I used to really not like wearing turtlenecks or long sleeve shirts. When I would wear those, I didn't like that at all. I just felt so constrained and constricted, right? And I didn't like that. Or say you were walking down the street and you're walking on the sidewalk and everything feels great because you're walking on the sidewalk. But now somebody bumps into you. This physical object touches your body and you find this to be disagreeable. You might be irritated or annoyed or frustrated with this person who just bumped into you because you're experiencing this disagreeable contact. You have this craving to be able to walk down the street and never bump into anybody, right? Well, that's not possible. You live in a world where people are going to be bumping into each other sometimes because there's other beings around. Whereas if your mind's craving to have permanently agreeable physical objects touch the body, when you get bumped into on the street, you might get frustrated or annoyed or agitated or some other discontent feeling. So then there's the mind itself. This is the sixth sense base. You might have been taught the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and the body as the five senses. But here in the teachings of the Buddha, you can learn about the sixth sense, because this is part of the central desire. What this is where the mind itself is thinking about things in the past, for example. And if you think about pleasurable things in the past, you can be experiencing pleasant feelings in the present moment. Maybe you're thinking about that boyfriend or girlfriend from the past, or maybe a sexual experience, or maybe you're thinking about money or something like this, some pleasant thing that happened in the past. And now you're basing your emotions and your feelings in the present moment based on something in the past. You haven't had any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, or the body. It's just the mind thinking about something pleasurable. And now in the present moment, you're experiencing conditioned pleasant feelings based on the condition of thinking about that thing. But now the mind starts thinking about something painful in the past, something that your mind's clinging to, maybe something from your childhood, maybe something that your mom or dad said to you, or maybe some physical or mental abuse that you experienced. The mind is clinging to this. And now when you're thinking about that situation from the past, in the present moment, you're experiencing painful feelings. This is the mind's central desire. And the same thing can happen for the future, that you're thinking about something in the future. You can get so excited that you're about to go on that trip to Australia, or you're about to go on that trip to Cambodia or Thailand or Laos or somewhere else. You get so excited about going on that trip. There hasn't been any contact through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, or body. It's just the mind thinking about this thing in the future, and your mind is experiencing these conditioned feelings. Or the same thing can happen with painful feelings, that you can feel stress or anxiety, that you're thinking about something. You have to go to work tomorrow, and there's this big presentation that you need to do, and you need to talk to your boss about this very difficult subject or something like that. And now when you're thinking about that thing, now you feel stress and anxiety in the present moment because the mind's thinking about this particular thing. There hasn't been any contact through the 6 sense bases in terms of the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, or the body, but this 6th sense base of the mind, because it's thinking about the future and it can't let that go. It has a craving for something to occur. It has this central desire for something specific to occur in the future. Your mind is now experiencing painful feelings in the present moment. Stress, anxiety, fear, something like this. So this is what central desire is, that the mind is longing, yearning through these 6 sense bases, wanting things to be permanently agreeable. The mind's craving permanently agreeable contact through the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. And you can eradicate this. And a vast majority of the work that you're doing on the path to enlightenment is to eradicate central desire. And you're learning through the Eightfold Path how to do that. And as you go forward in the program, I'm going to teach you more and more about how to eradicate this central desire, which is at the core of the mind experiencing these discontent feelings. Then, because of central desire, there's ill will in the mind. What ill will is this deeply rooted container, this fetter, this mental object, where there's hostility and hatred and anger, aggression, resentment, frustration, irritation, and annoyance. There's like this spectrum of emotions and feelings that you can experience, where the mind wishes harm on other beings. And this is because of the central desire, that when the mind gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings. But when the mind doesn't get what it wants, when the central desire isn't being fulfilled, then it experiences this ill will, like that person who pulls up to you in the car with the music that you don't like. You just hope that there's a police officer down the street waiting for them to give them a ticket. Right? You're wanting something bad to happen to them, right? This is the ill will. This is the anger, the hostility. So if it wasn't for central desire, ill will wouldn't have been there. So this ill will is the anger, the hatred, the hostility. And there's antidotes for this. And that's what we're going to be learning with loving kindness meditation. Loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness is what will eradicate the ill will. The breathing mindfulness meditation is working to eradicate central desire, as well as practicing generosity, where you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required without any expectation of anything in return. Something like your time, effort, energy, and resources. So as you're bringing down your central desire more and more, it will automatically help you to eliminate ill will. But you need to actually go in and work on central desire and ill will at the same time. And there's certain tools and techniques that I'm going to be teaching you. So I'm going to be teaching you these things and helping you to learn them, and you'll be developing them in your life practice and understand that this is what's underneath of it all. This is the reason why you're learning the various meditations or the various practices that we're sharing. This is why you're learning the Eightfold Path, the work on eradicating these things. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions you guys might have on the lower fetters, and then we'll move into the higher fetters. The higher fetters won't take as long to discuss because they're a lot more straightforward, I think. These are pretty straightforward too, except for maybe personal existence view. Some people have a bit of challenge understanding that one. But we're going to talk about the higher fetters here in a moment and the 4 stages of enlightenment. So let me know what questions you guys have. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Julia has a question here. How do you practice right speech when the person who's part of your family is not and does not respect your boundaries? There is a strong impulse to try to change their behavior, even though I know logically that it is wrong and I can only work on myself. Thank you, Teacher David. Your teachings bring a lot of peace. Okay, so it's helpful to understand this whole idea of creating boundaries is actually a craving, desire, attachment. I know this is like something that's widely taught in the world, and people feel like what you're supposed to do is have these boundaries, and then when someone crosses your boundary, they've done something wrong. But this is like going out into the world and trying to teach other people to do things your way. That I have certain boundaries, and everybody around me needs to learn what those boundaries are, and if you've crossed those boundaries, you've done something wrong. right? This is a craving. This is a desire. This is an attachment that the mind's having. So you need to be able to drop that and understand that people are going to make decisions based on whatever wisdom they have or lack thereof. And when they make certain decisions, that's their decisions. And all you can do is control your own decisions. So in a situation where you're working to practice right speech, you develop right speech. When somebody else is being aggressive, hostile, or bitter to you, you have a choice to make. And usually the best choice is to walk away, to ignore it, right? Because you can't get through any kind of beneficial speech when their mind is angry and hostile and bitter or disrespectful. So that's why those 5 factors of well-spoken speech, when the Buddha teaches to speak at the right time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness, this is why the right time is first. Because if it's not the proper time to talk, just walk away from the conversation, right? So if somebody's being bitter and harsh and hostile, they're being disrespectful, it's the wrong time to talk. Just walk away. Your craving is going to make it difficult for you to walk away. You're going to want to hold on, or you're going to want to argue, or you might want to prove your point. But this isn't actually going to solve anything. This is just making it erupt. This is just escalating it. So drop the boundaries. Don't have any expectations of how other people should or shouldn't function. That's what a boundary is. It's an expectation that everybody should function a certain way. That's the craving for permanence. And it's not going to be able to lead to your peacefulness and your joy. Understand that everybody has different wisdom in the world, and everybody's going to function based on that wisdom or the lack thereof. And now when somebody's interacting with you, you're making a choice. Do I choose to talk here? Is it the proper time or not? And if it's the proper time, then talk. But if not, then walk away and problem solve, right? And then this person learns, if they're a close relative of yours, that, hey, whenever I'm bitter and harsh and hostile with this person, they walk away from me. And if I'm interested in talking to this person, I'm going to need to remain calm. So you're teaching people through your actions all the time. If we stand there and we argue and we bitter and harsh and hostile back to them, this is your Gotama, that when you're put out the bitterness and harshness and hostility, it's going to come right back to you. So you would like to shut that down by practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And if it's not the proper time, you just walk away and just keep walking away. And if that's what you need to keep doing, you just walk away. This is called protecting your doorways of discontentedness. The doorways of discontentedness are the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind itself. Anytime you become discontent, it's going to be because of contact through these 6 sense bases, because of the sensual desire. So if you stay in the conversation, you're seeing this person become angry, you're hearing them become angry, and you're taking in this contact, and your mind's going to get frustrated and agitated and annoyed based on your own cravings. So if you would like to protect your doorways, you just walk away and you preserve the mind, right? And if they don't want you to walk away, they get angry when you walk away, oh well, that's their craving, desire, attachment. You're not causing that anger. Okay, so let's see what else Julie is asking. How do you meditate when you are in physical pain? I have a lot of dental pain. I wonder if it's due to wrong speech. So dental pain, some underlying medical thing, right? And you would like to address that. That's a wise decision to address your medical concerns. But then if you need to meditate if you can when you're not experiencing that pain. Maybe if you need some medication, then go ahead and take some medication if that's what you need. But also you can try to meditate when you're actually experiencing physical pain. This will help you to disassociate with the body as being who you are. As long as the mind clings to this body, then you'll experience the mental anguish along with the physical pain. So just do the best that you can do. There's no secret or mystical thing that we could recommend, but instead you do the best that you can do. Meditate when you don't have pain. Take medication if you can in order to subside the pain, so you can meditate then. But then also sometimes when there is pain, meditate then too. This is really helpful for the mind, that the mind realizes that you're not going to always be able to meditate in perfect conditions. That's the mind craving permanence. So put the mind in these various situations so that it can learn to meditate no matter what is happening around you. Great questions there, Julia. Let's see. We have some questions coming in here from Mayu Lee. Let's see what Mayu Lee has to ask. Let's see. Just pull these up here. Okay, Mayu Lee is asking, if getting nervous when doing presentation in front of large number of people fails only under personal existence view, or could that be other fetters as well? It can be other fetters as well, but the primary fetter that is being triggered there is personal existence view. So when you're doing a presentation, you can have personal existence view where you're wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way and you feel shy or you feel stage fright because you're not being perceived in the way your mind wants to be perceived. But there can also be central desire in there, right? That the mind's longing, yearning through the sense bases. There can be conceit and arrogance and pride, which we're going to talk about in the higher fetters. So oftentimes in any one particular situation, there can be more than one fetter that is actually being triggered. And this is where the emotions are actually stronger and more profound. But there's usually one primary fetter, and then there's kind of like other ones can potentially be ancillary and kind of minimal. But in the situation where somebody's experiencing stage fright, or they're inhibiting or shy from experiencing peacefulness as they're doing public speaking, this is primarily personal existence view. And now I see, Mayuli, that you actually said sensual desire and conceit too. And the answer is yes. Those actually are part of what could potentially be triggered as part of somebody being scared or shy in terms of doing public speaking. So you're right on there. You're actually seeing that very clearly. So perfect. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So let's move to the higher fetters, where I'll help you to understand these. I'm going to describe numbers 6 and 7 at the same time because they're very similar. This is desire for form and desire for formless. What desire for form is this is where mind is craving and clinging and holding on, desiring existence in the form realms, meaning the animal realm or the human realm, that you want to exist in the animal realm or human realm. Like maybe you want to be reborn as a bird or a dog or a cat, or maybe you want to be reborn as a human. This is desire for form. There's desire for existence. Desire for the formless is where you have a desire to be reborn in one of the formless realms, like hell, afflicted spirits, or heavenly realm. There are beings who desire to be reborn in hell, or afflicted spirits, which is like a ghost, or the heavenly realm. This is a very common one. Lots of people want to be reborn in the heavenly realm. And these realms are not permanent. The heavenly realm is not permanent. It's not an ideal existence. The human realm is actually an ideal existence because you have built-in motivation to actually get to enlightenment. But if you have desire for form, you have desire for formless, you have a desire to exist in the world. And because of this, there's going to be fear of death. That as you get closer and closer to death, you're holding on to this world and you don't know what's next. And now the mind can experience this fear of death. Well, when you eradicate desire for form and desire for formless, you're not craving to exist in the world, but you're not craving for non-existence either, right? Craving non-existence would be like wanting to commit suicide, right? That's not what you're interested in doing either. You would like to get to the point where you're in the middle, where your mind is peaceful and joyful in the present moment, realizing that there is an existence and you're content with that. And okay, this is where you are right now in life, that you're in this human existence. There is this human existence. It's not permanent. And you're going to do what you can do in this life in order to train your mind and get as close and close to enlightenment as you can. But if you're craving and you're clinging, you're holding on to existence, or you're craving non-existence, you'll experience discontentedness. In the present moment, if you're craving existence, again, you'll have fear of death. Or if you're in the present moment and you're craving non-existence and you don't want to exist, you'll be very discontent. You'll potentially be interested in committing suicide, right? So you can eradicate desire for form and formless, and you'll experience peace and liberation. That it's like, okay, well, there is this existence, and you know what? Let's make the most of it, right? You'll have a positive, uplifting attitude towards this existence. So you're going to need to eradicate any desire and any kind of holding on for this world and being in this world, but also any kind of desire and holding on to not be in this world as well, in any of the 5 realms, including this existence in the heavenly realm. Existence in the heavenly realm is not permanent. Just like existence in the human realm is not permanent either. Existence in the heavenly realm is not permanent. This is why a lot of people tend to think that they want to be in heaven, is because they think it's a permanent existence, but it's not. And they're going to be very disillusioned if they ever get to that point where they're actually being reborn in heaven and they realize that it's not permanent. Then they can be reborn from heaven down into hell, afflicted spirits, the animal realm. They can be reborn into the human realm from the heavenly realm. They can be reborn back into the heavenly realm as well. So you'll need to get to the point where you eradicate this. And there's certain tools and techniques to be able to help you do that I'll teach you at a later time. But these are 2 fetters that are going to hinder you from getting to enlightenment, because as long as you're holding on to this world, your mind hasn't let go, and there's going to be discontentedness. Number 8 is conceit. This is the arrogance, the pride, the judging others, the measuring and comparing, thinking that you're superior or that you're inferior to others. This is where the ego is there, right? Personal existence view, the first fetter, and conceit is what comprises the ego. The word ego didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha, but we refer to this as ego. But it's actually helpful to see it as 2 separate things. So when we get to chapter 16, I will talk and help you understand what the ego is and how to eliminate it. But it's actually comprised of personal existence view and conceit. The aspect of conceit is this pride, this measuring, this comparing, this thinking that you're better or thinking that you're worse than others. Putting yourself above people is dangerous because you're going to talk down to people arrogantly, and this is going to cause people to push you away. They're going to think like, this person's so arrogant and prideful. They're going to push you away. You're not going to be able to reside harmoniously with all beings. But it's also just as dangerous to put yourself below people. If you put yourself below people, you're going to feel diminished. You're going to feel like less of a person. And now your mind's going to be shaken up. Like when you're around your boss, you might think your boss is so high, you're going to be shaken up by that. Or if you're around like a famous celebrity or your president or prime minister of your country, you're going to be shaken up by that, right? Because you think that you're so much lower than them. And where all of this is coming from, where your mind is measuring and comparing and judging others, maybe you have negative self-talk that because you're judging other people, you're also judging yourself and looking at yourself as being negative or diminished of a person. Where this is all coming from is your previous existences. That in your animal existences, because we've all been countless animals in the past, we needed conceit. We needed a pecking order in the animal world. This is how we survived. That when we were a wolf pack, we needed to know who's the alpha male and who's the alpha female, because they're going to teach us how to hunt. They're going to teach us how to survive. If we don't know who the alpha male and alpha female are in our wolf pack, we're lost. We don't know how to hunt. Or in our elephant herd, we needed to know who the matriarch of our elephant herd was, because she's going to show us where to eat, she's going to show us where the watering holes are, and she's going to show us the migration paths. At different seasons during the year, we're going to need to migrate from place to place to place. So we needed this pecking order in our animal existences. And because we've had so many animal existences, our mind has retained this conditioning of conceit. Our mind is holding on to this in the unenlightened state in the human world. We go into a social situation and you might be looking for a pecking order. You might be trying to find out who's above you and who's below you. And now when you're in that situation, you talk to one group of people in one way and you talk down to them. But then when you're talking to other people, you talk up to them. And now your mind is obsessively trying to figure out in a social situation who's above me and who's below me. And you have to talk to one group of people one way and another group of people another way. And your mind's overworked, right? It's overworked, it's burdened trying to figure out how to do this. And you can eradicate this from the mind, where you just treat everybody equally. And you're humble, where when you're around the prime minister or the president or a celebrity, you're polite, kind, friendly, respectful to them. But also when you're walking outside on the street and you see somebody sweeping the street, you're polite, kind, friendly, respectful to them too. You can get to a permanent practice where you're always treating everybody the same. And now your mind can be at ease because you don't have to obsessively figure out how to talk to one group of people or how to talk to another group of people. You don't have to figure out the pecking order. You can just look at everybody as equal, right? So if other people think of themselves as being above you, so be it. That's their mind. But for you, you can eradicate the conceit and you just look at everybody as equal, right? And now you can live harmoniously with all beings. Because if you're arrogant and prideful towards others, they will push you aside. And when they push you aside, you're going to feel lost and lonely and confused. And it's this ego and this arrogance and this conceit, this judging others. And if you judge others, you will tend to judge yourself too. And you might have this negative self-talk in the mind. And this is where loving kindness meditation comes in, that I'm going to help you with loving kindness meditation because it'll help you to be more loving and kind to others as well as yourself. And then there's restlessness. This is the 9th fetter. This is where the mind has overactivity, where the mind's confused, distracted, worried, having anxiety or restless state of mind. It's the opposite of singleness of mind or concentration. If you have like a knee that you just bounce up and down and up and down and up and down, or you have a pencil that you just keep tapping and tapping and tapping, or clicking a pin over and over and over again, or if you have your fingers and you just go blah, 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 you just tap your fingers over and over and over again. This is because the mind is restless, it's overactive, and it's coming through in the body. That the mind's overactivity is coming through in the body because the mind is the boss and the body's the employee. The body's just following along. So if you're tap, 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 this is the restlessness in the mind. And you can eradicate this through eliminating craving, desire, attachment. And then the hindrance of all hindrances, or the fetter of all fetters, is ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. Oftentimes people are translating this as ignorance, but remember, a fully perfectly enlightened Buddha, they're not going to talk in a derogatory way, a degrading way towards others. So while people translate this word ignorance, and I will use it so that you understand when other people are teaching what they're actually teaching, that it's referring to this particular fetter, I would never refer to somebody as ignorant, right? This would be unwise to do this. And a Buddha and an enlightened being is not going to refer to somebody as ignorant. Instead, you can think of it as the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, the confusion, the misunderstanding of the mind. That's what this is, that the mind misunderstands in the unenlightened state. It doesn't understand and it doesn't practice the teachings of the Buddha. The mind doesn't understand things like the 10 fetters. It doesn't understand that there's central desire in the mind and you're longing, yearning through the sense bases. It doesn't understand things like personal existence view or wrong behavior and observances and things like this. It doesn't understand the Eightfold Path or the 5 precepts or meditation training. It lacks wisdom. And as long as the mind is lacking wisdom, it's going to continue to experience these discontent feelings over and over and over and over and over and over again. So it's because of the 10th fetter that all the other fetters exist. If it wasn't for the 10th fetter, all the other ones would have been eradicated. So the way you eradicate this ignorance is through the learning, that investigation, examination, through the reflection to independently verify, and to practice the teachings. As you integrate them into your practice, that's where you'll actually see the real results, and you're eradicating the ignorance. There's plenty of people in the world that might understand a certain level of the teachings of the Buddha intellectually, but they haven't eradicated ignorance perhaps because they're not practicing the teachings. It's when you're actually practicing them that you'll eradicate this ignorance from the mind. That you could understand the 5 precepts all day long, or you could understand the Four Noble Truths all day long intellectually. But if you don't actually integrate them into your life and start to function through these teachings, your mind still has this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. So it's because of ignorance that all the other fetters continue to exist. And the way that you eradicate this is you get to wisdom, that you need to be able to learn, reflect, and practice and see the truth, acquire wisdom, and that's what's ultimately going to lead to your enlightenment. So that's why I start students off from the very beginning, helping them to understand not to believe anything that I teach, that you need to learn, reflect, and practice to be able to get to wisdom. Because underlying all of this is this particular fetter of ignorance. So you need to arise wisdom to be able to get to the point where you can awaken to enlightenment. And this is why rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to help you to fix the problem that you're experiencing, because rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship doesn't eradicate ignorance. It doesn't cultivate wisdom. It's actually part of the ignorance. It's actually part of the unknowing of true reality. When someone's doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, it's part of the unknowing of true reality. But when you can arise this wisdom, eradicating this ignorance, that's where you can now experience real progress. And that's why learning the true teachings of the Buddha is so important. There's plenty of people who might consider themselves Buddhist in the world. There's about 500 million people that consider themselves Buddhist, but a very small percentage of them are actually learning with the true teachings of the Buddha. We're at this low point in society where humanity has basically forgotten the teachings of the Buddha. They've essentially disappeared from the world. And now, because of that, you have 500 million people who consider themselves Buddhist, but very few people actually have access to the original true teachings of the Buddha, learn them, reflect on them, and practice. You would think that every temple must have the original teachings of the Buddha, or every monk must have the original teachings of the Buddha, but this isn't actually true. That these teachings have really been hidden, not intentionally, but because it's so costly to print out all the 45 volumes of books, that the average person doesn't have access to the teachings. And this is why I put them online, that they're freely available to everybody, that you can download them in a consolidated version that's going to help you, so that now they can come into the world more and more readily. So I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one that actually shares the original teachings of the Buddha. That's less than 1%. If you do the math, that's less than 1%. So you having access to the original teachings of the Buddha, the true teachings, is what will help you to eradicate this ignorance by learning, reflecting, and practicing. And now you can get to wisdom, and you can eradicate all these fetters and truly unlock the mind, get it to the point where it's liberated and is experiencing freedom from these strong feelings. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, it looks like Mayuli's asking a question here. What if we are able to eliminate fetters 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, but not 100% able to eliminate the first fetter? Does that mean we can't progress to the other stages until the first fetter is fully eliminated? You can do the work on all these fetters at any time that you like, but in terms of the mind getting to the first stage of enlightenment, which is what I'm going to explain next, you would need to have eradicated the first fetter. So if somebody has eliminated 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, but they haven't eliminated number 1, they're still in the jhanas. They haven't gotten to the first stage of enlightenment yet. Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So now what I'm going to do is share with you the 4 stages of enlightenment, because as you're eradicating these fetters, your mind's going to move through these 4 stages of enlightenment, and this is where you're going to see significant improvement to the condition of the mind. We refer to this as stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. An easy way to think about this is the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th stage of enlightenment. The mind is actually enlightened when it's in the 4th stage of enlightenment as an arahant. That's where you've eradicated all the 10 fetters. But in these other stages of enlightenment, you're experiencing improved results to the condition of the mind in your life, but you haven't yet fully purified the mind, so the mind's not yet enlightened, where you're experiencing peace and joy permanently. We refer to the 1st stage of enlightenment as stream enterer, because once you get into the 1st stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. It's just like a log enters the stream, that it's going to eventually get to the ocean. It's only a matter of time. So a stream enterer is an individual who's eradicated the first 3 fetters. That when you've eliminated personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances, you've now entered the stream. And you will get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. There's other teachings that you need in order to get to the 1st stage of enlightenment. So you're going to be starting out with these core central teachings, but ultimately as you develop that more and more, you might decide to attend the retreat that I teach in January, either in person or online, or you might listen to the recordings, where everything that I teach in January is everything you need to get to the 1st stage of enlightenment. And as part of that, you will have eradicated these first 3 fetters: personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior, and observances. And if you die in that stage of enlightenment, you will come back to the human realm no more than 7 times. Not a maximum of 7. I'm sorry, not a guaranteed 7, but a maximum of 7. You might come back 1 more or 2 more times, but a maximum of 7 times. And you may have been a stream enterer in the past. You don't necessarily know right now. So a stream enterer is an individual who's in that 1st stage of enlightenment. When you get to that 1st stage of enlightenment, you'll see a significant diminishing of discontentedness. The discontentedness that you're experiencing in the 1st stage of enlightenment is a mere fraction of what you once experienced when you were off the path to enlightenment. You'll see this significant improvement to the condition of the mind. And now it's only a matter of time, either in this life or some future life, that you will actually get to enlightenment. Then there's a once returner. This is the 2nd stage of enlightenment. They've already eliminated the first 3 fetters of personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior, and observances. But they've thinned out number 4 and 5, which is sensual desire and ill will. So if you're noticing less interest in sex, in sexual intimacy, this is because the mind is slowly diminishing sensual desire. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes people identify as who they are because of personal existence view through sensual desire, through whether or not they're having sexual intercourse or not, and how great their sexual intercourse is. Or they might judge their relationship about how good or bad the relationship is based on the quality of the sex or how often or frequently you're having sex. But you diminishing sensual desire, you'll notice that you'll have less and less interest in sex. And this is actually really helpful for you, because when you're having sex, you'll be excited, you'll be happy, you'll feel great. But when you're not having sex, you'll be agitated or annoyed or frustrated or agitated. So some people choose to get to the second stage of enlightenment and they kind of hang out there for a while. You could do that. It could be 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. You could be still having a sexual relationship and in that second stage of enlightenment. You'll actually notice that your sexual contact is actually heightened when you're in that second stage of enlightenment, because oftentimes when we're off the path to enlightenment and we're having sex, it's all about us. It's all about pleasing me. But when you get to the second stage of enlightenment, if you're having sex there, your focus will probably shift, where it's more about pleasing the other person. And by putting that out, that's what will typically come back to you. So if you're noticing a decrease in your sensual desire, this is completely normal as you age. And as you train your mind, this is completely normal. So a person who's in the second stage of enlightenment will have thinned out their sensual desire. And because of that, they will have thinned out their ill will too. It's not fully eradicated yet, but it's thinned out. Then there's the third stage of enlightenment, which is called non-returner. If an individual is in this stage of enlightenment, they've eliminated all the 5 lower fetters: personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior and observances, sensual desire, and ill will. And if they die in this stage of enlightenment, they will be reborn into the human realm. They will be reborn in the heavenly realm, and they will attain enlightenment from there. They won't come back to the human realm. This is a non-returner. And here you need to be really careful when you're in this third stage of enlightenment, because the discontentedness that you're experiencing here is very minimal and very infrequent. Maybe once every 3 months or once every 6 months, you're experiencing a little bit of ickiness, a little bit of discontentedness here and there. And you might kind of disregard it and you might ignore it, and the mind can actually become complacent. The mind is not yet enlightened, but you're experiencing a lot of the qualities of enlightenment for extended periods of time. And this is where the mind can become complacent. So you're going to need to stay dedicated and diligent in that third stage of enlightenment, that even that slightest little bit of ickiness in the mind needs to be eradicated. So here, this is the third stage. We call it non-returner. And then the fourth stage of enlightenment, where the mind is actually enlightened, this is what we refer to as an arhat, that an individual has fully purified their mind of all the 10 fetters: personal existence view, doubt, wrong behavior and observances, sensual desire, ill will, desire for form, desire for the formless, conceit, restlessness, and ignorance. All of them have been eradicated from the mind. The mind is fully purified. It's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. You're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. There's not even the slightest ickiness in the mind. You're always in a good mood. The mind's focused and concentrated, having clarity of mind, because there's not these pollutions in the mind anymore. So you'll notice when you're speaking, you'll be focused and concentrated. Your mind can be in the present moment. It's not wandering around somewhere else. That when you're in a business meeting, you can focus on the business meeting. You'll be performing optimally. The mind's been fine-tuned at this point. And you'll continue to develop wisdom more and more and more from this point forward all throughout your life. But in terms of the path to enlightenment, you fully cultivated the wisdom of what it takes, that you've not only intellectually understood it, not only have you reflected on it to verify it, but you're practicing it on a day-to-day basis, and you're doing it with ease. It takes time to do that. It's like upgrading your operating system on your computer. That when you first upgrade to the new operating system, it's kind of cumbersome. It's kind of hard to operate. But then once you get up and running with that new operating system, it's easy, it's effortless. And you're like, wow, this is so much easier. The same thing is true about these teachings. That as you're upgrading to these teachings, it's quite challenging. There's some struggles and difficulties along the way. But once you get up and running with these teachings and your mind's fully purified, life is so easy. It's so straightforward. Why didn't you know this before? That's what you might think by the time you get to enlightenment. Like, wow, if I would have just known this when I was 10 years old, life would have been so much better. Or when I was 20 or 30 years old, life could have been so much better. But nonetheless, you're learning whenever you're learning. And now when you learn, you upgrade your operating system. And now you can practice effortlessly when the mind's fully purified. And then there's something called a fully perfectly enlightened Buddha. This isn't actually a stage of enlightenment. This is a type of individual. A fully perfectly enlightened Buddha is an arahant. They fully purified their mind, but they've done it in a way and they meet certain criteria that other enlightened beings don't meet. That there are other enlightened beings in the world, but a Buddha coming into the world is a very rare thing that only happens once every so often. So the criteria of what makes a Buddha is that they attain enlightenment by themselves without any teachers or any guides, that through their own efforts and their own dedication, without any guidance, they get to enlightenment on their own. The second criteria is that they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people throughout their life. And countless people get to enlightenment through that person's teachings. Then the third criteria is that they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the three primary criteria of what makes a Buddha a Buddha. They get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings, and countless people get to enlightenment during their lifetime. Then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. These are the three criteria that make a Buddha a Buddha. So you'll be an enlightened being and you'll be perfectly peaceful, but in terms of a Buddha, you won't be a Buddha at that point. There's people nowadays that will tell you that everybody is a Buddha, or they might tell you that you have Buddha nature, but the Buddha never said that. That's other people today. That's their arrogance, that's their ego, that's their conceit, thinking that they're a Buddha. But a Buddha is very rare in the world. And the Buddha talks about this, and he says how rare it is that a Buddha would arise in the world. The reason why an individual that is to become a Buddha can actually do this and actually get to enlightenment by themselves is because they have a certain aspect of their mind that is very unique and different than your mind. They have a very profound and deep memory that they can remember countless details about their current life and their past lives too. Your mind has a certain capacity that you can remember certain things from this life, and you may even have some residual memories of your past lives too, but you kind of have spotty memories. So for example, in the last 5 or 10 years, you probably remember a certain amount of things that happened to you. But when you think back to your childhood, you just have spotty memories. The reason why is because you have a limited capacity in your mind. It's much like a hard drive, that you have maybe 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte. And now as you experience new things, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. But some of the residual memories of those old files stick around. So this is why when you think back to your childhood, you have spotty memories about things that happened during your childhood. But in the last 5 years or so, you remember, pretty much the things that happened. Well, a Buddha's mind, or the person who's to become a Buddha, their mind doesn't function this way. That they have an unlimited capacity in their mind, that they can actually remember countless details about their current life and their past lives as well. And now they put together all that wisdom to the point where now in the present moment in this life, they can get to enlightenment by themselves because they've accumulated this wisdom over multiple lifetimes. They can also quickly determine the condition of someone else's mind and help them through providing them teachings to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities and cultivate certain wholesome qualities. But they would only do this if the person asked for help. Right? They're not going around judging other people, looking at other people, barging into their life and telling them what they should or shouldn't do. Instead, a Buddha only teaches people who ask for help. And when someone asks for help, they can observe the qualities of their mind and then offer them suggestions on how to help them because of the condition of their mind. A Buddha has a deep practice of their own teachings. They're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings because a Buddha understands that they're teaching just as much through their actions as they are through their spoken words. That when they're speaking in their discourses, they're teaching and they're helping people to understand what it takes to get to enlightenment. But they're teaching just as much, if not more, through their actions. their verbal actions, their bodily actions, and their mental actions. So they're going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings so that their students can understand how to practice in the world as an enlightened being. So you're not going to see a Buddha teach right speech and then go out into the world and practice wrong speech. They're not going to teach to eliminate lying and then go out into the world and start lying. They're not going to teach to eliminate stealing and then go out into the world and start stealing. They're not going to teach to eradicate anger and hatred and then go out in the world and have anger and hatred. They've fully purified their mind. They're going to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings, and their students are going to be able to learn through that. So this is what a fully, perfectly enlightened one is, and we refer to them as fully, perfectly enlightened because they don't have any teachers or any guides. Where someone who's learning from an average person, you might actually get to enlightenment, and maybe 80 or 90% of what it is that you learn leads to your enlightenment, but you might be holding on to a little bit of baggage of things that didn't actually lead to your enlightenment. Maybe 10, 20, 30% of what you're holding on to. But a fully, perfectly enlightened one, they don't hold on to anything. Right? Anything that they use to improve the condition of their mind, they know that that is the path to enlightenment. But if there's anything that doesn't lead to improvement to the condition of their mind, they know that that isn't part of the path to enlightenment and they discard it. But an average student might tend to hold on to a couple of things that aren't the actual path to enlightenment. And this is why they're not fully, perfectly enlightened. But a fully, perfectly enlightened Buddha, they're fully, perfectly enlightened. In terms of the path to enlightenment, what they teach is exactly the path to enlightenment. So let me know what questions you guys have. This is everything that I was going to share with you guys today. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Brent has a question and Marcy has a question here as well. So Marcy's just saying goodbye. Brent is saying, do you know where, when, if Maitreya Buddha will come? Yes, I do. I know the information here that the Buddha describes during his lifetime that Maitreya Buddha, which is the next Buddha, Maitreya means loving kindness. The Buddha describes that 2,500 years after his death, that there would be a new Buddha that would come into the world and that would restore his teachings into the world in such a way that all of humanity could get to enlightenment. And the Buddha describes this occurring 2,500 years after his death. The Buddha is reported to have died in 483 BC, which makes the year 2017 the time when Maitreya Buddha would appear in the world. Doesn't mean he's being born then, it doesn't mean anything like that. That's when he would start kind of stepping out and start kind of helping people to know that he exists in the world. So you can't think that a Buddha is going to get on the 5 o'clock news and declare, okay, I'm here now, everybody come learn from me. Because right away, everybody would know that that person's not a Buddha if they got on the news and they declared that. So 2017 is when Maitreya Buddha started to appear in the world. And since then, they've been teaching their teachings to be able to help others to understand what it takes to get to enlightenment. But if an individual is a Buddha and they're wise enough to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, they would also be wise enough to just start sharing their teachings and helping people to be able to get to enlightenment. And this is actually very helpful for a Buddha, that people don't know who the Buddha is. If people knew who a Buddha was, they could potentially be on their best behavior when they're around that individual, and then they wouldn't be able to use one of their number one powers as being a Buddha, is that they could observe the condition of people's minds and then be able to help them with teachings. Whereas if everyone was on their best behavior when they're around this person, this Buddha wouldn't be able to then observe the condition of their student's mind and then be able to help them. So people not knowing who a Buddha is actually better for a Buddha. So a Buddha doesn't need people to know that they are a Buddha in order to be effective and helpful in the world. Instead, they can just move out and start sharing their teachings, and this is actually very helpful for them and helpful for their students as well. So you shouldn't expect that a Buddha arising in the world today would go on the 5 o'clock news and declare that they are a Buddha. But I can assure you that Maitreya Buddha is in the world and he's sharing his teachings. But for you, it doesn't matter because you still need to get to enlightenment, right? You still need to learn and practice and develop on the path. So keep learning, keep growing, keep developing. And then someday, if you should happen to meet Maitreya Buddha, you might be able to identify that this is Maitreya Buddha. But Maitreya Buddha isn't interested in other people knowing that they are an actual Buddha, because they would like to retain that power of being able to observe their student's mind and then be able to help them with teachings to be able to then help them to actually get to enlightenment. Because that's the ultimate goal of a Buddha, is to be able to help as many people as possible get to enlightenment. Their goal isn't for the world to know that they exist. That's not the goal of a Buddha. A Buddha has already transcended any aspirations or any interest in being famous or having fortune or anything like that. Their primary interest is to help as many people to get to enlightenment as possible, and then to preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people can get to enlightenment after their death. Because a Buddha coming into the world, they've already gotten to enlightenment by themselves. Now their focus is to help countless people get to enlightenment and preserve their teachings so that countless more people can get to enlightenment. Whether people know that they're a Buddha or not, Maitreya Buddha wouldn't care about that. Okay, so great question there, Brent. Let me see if we have any others anywhere else. Okay, it looks like Mayuli has a question. Teacher, you mentioned before that you were able to remember your previous lives and you renovated your place when you were in the States. Do you still have that memory? Yes, I have countless memories of my existing life and my previous lives as well. I don't really talk about them too much because it's not really important for somebody to get to enlightenment to know those things. But when students ask me about it, I will share it with them to a certain level of detail, just a certain amount, just to help them understand what they could potentially experience at some point, because this does actually help you to know that you may potentially experience the recall of your past lives. But it's not something that I kind of put front and center because it's not really important. But I know the students ask those kind of questions at different times. So if you guys would ever like to ask those questions, you're welcome to ask. And I'll share a certain amount of detail on those, just kind of a little bit, just to help you understand what you might potentially experience. So yeah, I do actually remember countless details about my current life and my previous lives as well. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. All right, so what I'll do then is just thank all of you guys for coming to today's class and dedicating some time to learn and practice the teachings, and help you to understand that next class, I'm going to be starting with chapter 1 in terms of Sunday's class. The next Wednesday class, I'm going to be starting a 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. But this will be an ideal time, if you haven't already acquired one of these books, to start reading the preface and reading chapter 1. Maybe you like to read before class, maybe you like to read after class, maybe you like to read before and after class. It's really up to you. But you would like to be able to start reading the book, because there's certain things that are in the book that I don't teach in the classes. And there's certain things in the classes that I don't have in the book as well. So the combination of these two things are going to really help you. And if you read before the class, you'll be more informed, so that maybe if there's certain things you need clarity on, you can ask questions in the class. If you read after class, it can help solidify some of the things that you've actually learned in the class. So you can decide for yourself how you learn best, and then just let me know where you need clarification or you have questions. So next class, we're going to be in chapter 1, which is titled Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, Good Morals. This is where we're going to learn the connections between all these various traditions. And then on Wednesday, I'll be doing loving kindness meditation. Remember, you learning and practicing and developing your life practice, this is helping you to become more and more peaceful. It's helping the people around you and close to you, because you're causing less and less harm to them. And it's helping all of humanity become a more peaceful and loving society. So thank you for your dedication and diligence to learn to this point of the program. And now we'll just slowly go through the book, chapter by chapter by chapter, helping you to develop and understanding what it takes to be able to lay down a really strong foundation of the path to enlightenment. So thank you all for joining. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. This week coming up, I'm going to be teaching the Harmony and Relationships course Monday through Friday here at the temple in Chiang Mai, and I'll be live streaming that, and it'll be recorded. So depending on how much content you're interested in learning, there's that option for you. So we'll potentially see you in one of these future classes. Have a lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.